Welcome to the Sub-Proctor training for Spring 2016. This training is designed to introduce you to the expectations and duties of a test proctor. Spring testing begins February 29th and runs through June 7th. Below is a list of some of the assessments we will be administering this spring. When you arrive at a school, the school testing coordinator will be your direct supervisor. They will let you know what your duties will be for the day. They will have you sign the test security agreement. And we want to remind you that Florida takes testing security very seriously. Be sure to check in at the front office upon arrival. Per Test Security Statute 1008.24 and Florida State Board of Education Rule 6A-10.042, Florida Administrative Code, inappropriate actions by school or district personnel can result in student or classroom invalidations, loss of teaching certificate, and/or involvement of law enforcement. All proctors must participate in the Assessment Security Training 2015-2016 prior to administering proctoring any standardized assessment. This training only needs to be completed once this school year. Testing coordinators should retain original copies of completion certificates of all proctors and test administrators. The training is accessible to both OCPS employees and non-employees via each IMS page for elementary and secondary schools. We will now take a moment to view the OCPS assessment security video that elaborates on the test security rules imposed by the Florida Department of Education.
Welcome to the OCPS Accountability Research and Assessments presentation on assessment security. All faculty, staff, and volunteers who work with any state or district assessments are required to complete this training. There are many people in accountability, research, and assessment to help you through the school year. You can use this list to determine who to contact for specific assessment questions. The purpose of this training is to ensure that all faculty, staff, and volunteers who are involved with state and district assessments understand the importance of test standardization, test security, and their role in ensuring a successful and secure administration. The goal of this training is also to help participants understand the relationship between test security and solid results, the ramification of security breaches, and the difference between the teacher role and the test administrator role.
Assessment security means that the test items within an assessment, whether it be paper, pencil, or online, remain confidential at all times. This includes before, during, and after testing. Well thought out security procedures ensure that no one has access to the assessment's content, that a student's work is his or her own, and that all materials are kept free from tampering. The purpose of security is to provide fair and valid test results for students, teachers, and schools. Allowing students or teachers access to the test content prior to the assessment window would give students an unfair advantage. This would skew data for the student, teacher, school, and district and would mean that the test results are no longer valid. Because important decisions are made based on assessment data, it is essential to get fair and consistent test results. If test security is violated, it compromises the quality of these district and statewide decisions and the ability to judge performance.
School assessment coordinators take the lead in managing the assessment process at school sites, but it's everyone's responsibility to make sure assessment administration is successful. From the moment that an assessment arrives at your school, whether it be hard copy or online, someone must be responsible for its security at all times. When the assessments are not being actively administered, materials must remain in a secure location. Testing materials should never be left out on a teacher's desk or be placed in a teacher's mailbox. Florida law is very clear surrounding test administration and security. The entire text of the Test Security Statute and the Test Security Rule can be found at the back of each test administration manual. As I read the law, note the important points. Law 1008.24, Test Administration and Security. A person may not knowingly and willfully violate test security rules adopted by the State Board of Education for mandatory tests administered by or through the State Board of Education or Commissioner of Education to students, educators, or applicants for certification or administered by school districts pursuant to 1008.22 or with respect to any such test, knowingly and willfully to give examinees access to test questions prior to testing, copy, reproduce, or use any portion of any secure test book, coach examinees during testing, make answer keys available to examinees, fail to follow test administration directions, participate in, direct, aid, counsel, assist in, or encourage any of the acts prohibited in this section. There is also a Florida State Board of Education test rule, of which all faculty, staff, and volunteers working with assessments must be aware. As I read aloud, note the important points. Tests implemented in accordance with the requirements of Florida statutes shall be maintained and administered in a secure manner such that the integrity of the test shall be preserved. Test materials, including all test booklets and other materials containing secure test questions, answer keys, and student responses, shall be kept secure and precisely accounted for in accordance with the procedures specified in the examination program, administration manuals, and other communications provided by the department.
Though every assessment will have different guidelines that are dependent on the assessment, security is imperative, and having an organizational plan is crucial. School assessment coordinators will receive test-specific training before each assessment administration. There are some security procedures that should always be in place, regardless of the assessment. This includes all test materials being kept under lock and key, with access limited to the school assessment coordinator and approved essential personnel. Secure information must never be used to prep students in advance of testing. Assessment content must never be made available to students or teachers prior to administration. If a teacher has participated in the creation of an assessment, such as the state-required locally constructed EOC assessments, he or she must not use any materials or knowledge gained from their participation to prepare their students prior to testing. All participants in the SRLC EOC process signed assessment security and non-disclosure agreements prohibiting them from sharing any secure documents, items, or information with students, teachers, or any other individuals. A breach of this security would violate the Florida Test Security Statute and the Florida State Board of Education Test Security Rule, as well as their signed agreement. Any concerns around someone violating security should be reported to your school assessment coordinator or directly to ARA. Security is paramount during the administration of assessments. Students should always be made aware of testing rules surrounding prohibited activities during the administration of an assessment. In many cases, students will be asked to physically or electronically sign a student testing rules acknowledgement. During the test, students are prohibited from talking to other students or making any disturbance, looking at another student's answer sheet or computer screen, allowing another student to look at his or her answer sheet or computer screen, asking for help answering any test questions, giving help to another student and answering test questions. Having notes or scratch paper other than what is provided by the test administrator, having any electronic or recording devices at any time, including breaks, even if they are not used, failing to follow any other instructions given. After the test, students may not discuss the test items with anyone. This includes any type of electronic communication, including but not limited to texting, emailing, or posting online to websites like Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. If a student is found sharing information about test items, even without the intent to cheat, his or her test may be invalidated. For the duration of the assessment, you are a test administrator, not a classroom teacher. A test administrator must maintain a standardized test setting, assure students work independently, and remain neutral. A test administrator must never help students find an answer to a question or clarify an assessment item, point out missing or incorrect answers to students, read the test booklets as students are testing, make notes about or copies of information on the assessment, answer phone calls, or otherwise use electronic devices except as allowed to manage the assessment. Test administrators and proctors must not, either verbally or non-verbally, impact student responses. Standardization is vital for ensuring that every student receive the same testing experience. Every test administrator should read the script verbatim, give students the appropriate time, familiarize themselves with the test sessions that are being given, read the manual and be comfortable with all the processes surrounding the administration before the assessment session begins, and provide specified and allowed accommodations to designated students. If a student has a different assessment experience, their score is no longer comparable. It is important that assessment results convey a clear picture of what students know and don't know. Administering or proctoring a test is not a passive activity. All administrators and proctors must be consistently attentive to what students are doing and circulate around the room in an unobtrusive way. During an assessment, one should never read, grade papers, work on a computer or electronic device, or do anything other than actively monitor students. Active proctoring can prevent students from making bad decisions like hiding electronics or sharing answers or information about the assessment. Remember that students are endlessly creative. Proctors and administrators must remain vigilant to maintain test security. You are the adult and role model in the room. Active participation on your part will ensure a secure administration of the assessment. Security doesn't end once the test is administered. After the assessment, materials must be returned to your school assessment coordinator in a timely manner and using the secure process that he or she has set in place. The assessment's content must be kept secure even after testing has ended. All assessment materials, including the student response materials, must not be tampered with in any way. After testing, it is never permitted to read student responses or any test content, remove stray marks on a booklet or answer sheet, or check or alter student responses in any way. Maintaining security also means that a teacher must never talk to a student or anyone else about the content of the assessment. There are many other things to discuss with your students and coworkers. Discussing an assessment is never appropriate or worth the consequences of breaking security procedures. This is an illustration of a class taking a standardized assessment. Can you spot all of the security issues? Did you spot the students passing notes and talking during the assessment? These students could be cheating. How about the student sleeping in the front row? She should be on task. Be sure to stress the importance of the assessments to all of your students before testing to encourage students to use their time wisely. Did you notice the student covertly using his cell phone? Be sure that students understand the no electronic device policy before the assessment begins. Test administrators and proctors should understand the processes around the electronic device policy at their school. What about this test left unattended on the desk in the front row? Assessment material should always be secured if a student has to leave the testing room or is absent from testing. Finally, all of these things could have been prevented if the test administrator had been actively proctoring the assessment. It is never appropriate to read, grade papers, use electronic devices, or participate in anything that takes your attention away from the students who are testing.
Assessment security is important, and there are consequences to breaking the security rules and procedures. It's not worth it. There are many ways to detect whether or not an assessment security was violated. The state and district use various techniques to do so, including erasure, gains, and similarity analyses. Many security concerns are brought to light through reports from students, teachers, and parents. Contact your school assessment coordinator or ARA directly if you are concerned about a breach in security. The cost of violating security and impacting student responses can be very high. In Atlanta in 2009, school district employees tampered with student responses and faced criminal charges. This was discovered through forensic statistics that are now used in the state of Florida. State law and district policies have been set in place to discourage these kinds of actions. It's not worth it. Students may not graduate, teachers and administrators can lose their jobs and certification. School grades could drop. Most importantly, impacting responses is not fair to our students. It's important that assessment results portray a clear picture of what students know and don't know. False results make it impossible for students to receive the services they need and deserve. Inflated results also keep the district and state from making informed decisions based on these assessment scores. Again, it's not worth it. You'll be asked to sign 1 or 2 security agreements at the conclusion of your school assessment training.
As an educator, it is your responsibility to uphold the standards and expectations of your profession. We thank you for your time and attention. Please be sure to complete and sign any required security activities or documents for specific assessments.
Examples of strictly prohibited activities include the following: reading or viewing the passages or test items before, during, or after testing, revealing the passages or test items, copying the passages or test items, explaining or reading the passages or test items for students, changing or otherwise interfering with student responses to test items, copying or reading student responses, causing achievement for schools to be inaccurately measured or reported. You may be asked to assist the school test coordinator by completing the following tasks, including but not limited to: pack up materials to take to classes, check out materials to teachers, sharpening pencils, sort test tickets, count out materials, monitor hallways, escort students back to class, escort students to other rooms, run messages to the front office, post signs, or supervise breakfast, snacks, or lunch. When proctoring in the classroom, you may be asked to complete the following duties: collecting electronic devices from students, passing out materials or picking up materials, helping students log onto the computer, monitor students during the test, which also includes making sure students are working independently and making sure students are not using unauthorized electronic devices. Do you have questions? At the school, all questions should be directed to the school test coordinator. In the classroom, all questions should be directed to the teacher or test administrator. All other questions should be directed to your Kelly Services representative.